Hello, hello, beautiful people. I hope everyone is all right. Doing all good. We're doing this weird thing where we're doing a stream on verticals as well, which is not gonna work because it cuts everything important out. Like my face. Oh well, we'll just have to deal with it. Let's switch it on over. Trying out some new stuff. That's what you get with new stuff. You're used to this by now. If you watch the streams, if you watch like any of the presentation that we do for the team challenges, you know that like technical issues are part of the course here. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's having a great week. Good to see you, Swan. Good to see you, Zayad. Hope you're both doing good. Gonna be looking at 11 people today, so 11 members of our community are gonna be getting some live feedback, which I'm looking forward to. Yes, yes. So I'm excited. Let me organize my stuff here. It's been a pretty busy week. Oh my god. Yeah, trying to balance contract work, meetings after work. We're onboarding a new person for the workshops who will be announced soon. It's been intense, you know? It's gotten to the point where I took a bath and I hate baths. if that is any indication for all of you. It probably isn't, but hey. I just needed some chill time. But yeah, apart from that, all's well. We're making some really good progress on the academy course. So like our academy website, we're making some good progress. Sunny is doing a crazy good job of keeping up with like all the changes. She's editing stuff constantly, so she's going to like a couple of lessons. Hopefully, we're still looking around to find additional people. So we're still looking for 4 courses. That would be, I can't remember all of them, but like high poly modeling, UV unwrapping, baking, baking substance designer, I think. Yeah. So we are still looking to get people for those, but the rest of them is more like we have all the content. Now we just need to make the content look like really, really nice. So yeah. But yeah, that's going good. We also recently announced that I'll be doing portfolio reviews. So our first portfolio review session is actually going to be this Friday. So in 2 days, I'm going to do some experimentation. So what I want to be doing with my Friday sessions is I want to call them, I don't know, like office hours or something like that. And the idea behind that is basically that I'll be doing portfolio reviews first, and once they're done, I'll be just doing some work and chilling out and all that kind of stuff. So we will see how that goes. As of now, I've got no clue what I'm going to be doing on Friday, because it's been such a long time since I've done any personal work or like even touched like Blender or Unreal. So I think what we're going to try and do is we're going to open the medieval scene. We're gonna bring back our old buddy, our medieval scene, and we're just gonna, I don't know, have a look, see what we can do, see how broken it is. Because from the last point you've seen it, I've made, I've made a whole bunch of changes that basically broke a bunch of stuff. So it's kind of in the middle of like weirdness right now. So we'll see. Bara is asking a question. You're always free to ask any questions, so that's a good reminder for everyone jumping in. Feel free to ask any questions that I can help with. I've been in the industry for 10 years, so if you have any questions, feel free to just let me know. I'm working on a plugin system where I transfer the scene from Maya to Unreal as seamless as possible. As an environment artist, what is it you want to exist, or how would you want it to be? It's a good question, but honestly, so, I mean, this is gonna sound rough, but isn't that the whole reason why USD exists, right? Isn't that the whole purpose? that you can just like transfer between whatever program you go to whatever program you want to go into. Right? I mean, and you're also like the wrong person to ask, really, because what I never do as an environment artist, I never transfer full scenes, right? So usually what I'll do is I'll use like a batch exporter where I have all my individual assets that are like, I don't know, modular wall pieces or something like that. And then I just batch them out and it updates like all the individual instances in Unreal. That's what I use. And those systems already exist from Maya to Unreal as well. So yeah, maybe not the right person to ask, because also, like, if you really think about it, I use the systems in like the most bare bone function, right? So like a batch or like an exporter plugin like you're working on right now, I use it in like the most basic functionality because I'm not doing any exporting of I'm not doing any like animation transfer and all that kind of stuff. My project is simpler. It is basically a one-click transfer system. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I've not used USD by myself, so I can't speak to like how that works in comparison. But yeah, I can't be of too much help there, unfortunately, Bara. But thank you for asking the question. Hello, Sheila. Designer saying Friday streams are back. Yeah, we're definitely gonna try. We're definitely gonna, well, we're gonna try out a lot of stuff, right? Like, this is something that I wanted to try for the new year, is I want to try and experiment with things again. So I don't know, the current idea is that we're doing like office hours on Friday, right? Where it's basically, I'm gonna be starting at like 12, like basically lunchtime here, and then I'll stream for a couple of hours. We'll see how that goes. Maybe what I'll do like later on is that I'll stream like 2 hours here, 2 hours there. Who knows? I'm asking you because you have experience and I expect people like you. Oh, that's very kind. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't be of too much help there. Because, again, like the way that I use those systems is really limited compared to some other people. So unfortunately, can't be too much help there. But yeah, so I was saying the week is going good. Yeah, what else is coming up? Oh, so I want to show you something. So let me see. Hold on, before I do this. Not that one. Let's go here. Hello, Justine. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing? And how are you doing as well, Sheila? Okay, so let me switch on over. We're on the website, as beautiful as it is. As you can see, we're making some updates. I am making incremental updates to the entire website. I've been working pretty hard on updating and refreshing some of the pages. But I think the most interesting thing right now is that on the tips and tricks page, we now have all the tips and tricks like neatly organized and categorized and all that kind of stuff. So if you are looking for something about foliage, you can just type that in and it will give you like a bunch of stuff that contains like the tag words about foliage and stuff, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I wanted to kind of show this off, that this is like a little bit of an upgrade that we're doing to the back end to make your life easier to find like little weekly tips. And then, of course, we have portfolio reviews as well. So that's like the new thing. And yeah, we're constantly making some changes here. And then, yeah, we'll see on Friday for the first update, or like the first session of portfolio reviews, which I'm really looking forward to. Cool. I just wanted to show that off really quickly. Let me think. Is there something else that I want? I think that's it for now. Oh, wait, no, there's one more thing. This is more like an update thing, but now we have a proper page for the team challenges as well. So I'm still thinking about making some improvements on this, but I really like the way that it's looking now compared to the way that it was before. I still need to add like some images here, for example, you know, but yeah, all the team challenges, they're basically got like an update to the way that they look. So yeah, it all got like a refresh. Like everyone is here with like their little team icons and like all their ArtStation links and all that kind of stuff. So really happy with how this came along. As part of like, you know, it's like a lot of those invisible kind of like updates that I tend to do over time. That yeah, it's just it is nice for me, and I see those changes affecting everyone, right? But it's nice to shout them out, you know, now and again. So yeah, we're getting like a bunch of cool updates. Working pretty hard on those. But yeah. And then also now there's finally like a tracker where you can see when the next challenge is happening too. So that's pretty exciting. Right, let me switch back on over. Hello, Powertail. Hello, Mike. How are you both doing? Bara is saying, instead of rendering in Arnold, you can transfer the scene to Unreal and render it in Unreal. That's my idea. But thank you so much for everything. Yeah. Yeah, see, like, that sounds to me like it's more like VFX related, right? Because I've only rendered like in an offline renderer like Arnold once. Because I've always rendered everything in Unreal. And like I said, like I basically batch them over in pieces, right? Because I do my scene assembly in Unreal, which is very common for an environment artist to do, rather than making the scene in Maya and then transferring everything all at once, right? So from the ground up, I use those tools in a different way as well. Hello, Orgrobus. Good to see ya. But yeah, just a reminder for all the people that are coming in, this is a stream where we're going to be diving into some feedback in a little bit. But if you have any questions about, you know, any current gaming news, if you have like any questions about like how you get into the games industry yourself or anything like that, feel free to let me know and chat about it. Hey, Tobji, good to see ya. Hello, Anan. Hello, good to see ya. Yeah, so what is happening in the near future? As I said, on like Friday, we're doing portfolio reviews. I'm going to be doing some streaming afterwards as well. We're just gonna see how well we're gonna see how my scene looks and if it even runs while I'm streaming, because I feel like Unreal Engine has gotten so heavy and I haven't updated my hardware that I think we're gonna have to find out if I can even run my environment and then also stream at the same time. So we're gonna figure that one out. That's gonna be fun. What else is happening? Yeah, I think honestly the next couple of weeks is gonna be pretty intense because we are trying to get everything done by the end of next week for our online academy. So that means that we want to have like everything edited, all the videos need to be online, all the exercises need to be there, and that we can start onboarding people and start taking in feedback and making incremental improvements for the first batch of people that get access, which is also still a thing that we need to figure out as well. So yeah, I think honestly like a lot of exciting stuff coming on. It's just yeah, it's gonna be an intense couple of weeks, I think, to get there. But I'm excited. Drum roll. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. It's been a lot of iterations, a lot of improvements, and a lot of work from both myself and Sunny as well. So, yeah. We will see. I'm curious to see how people are gonna engage with it, you know? I'm really excited for that. That we can finally hand it over to people and then see them use it live. I think that's gonna be pretty cool. Yeah, lots of stuff to get there still. All right. God, I wanted to talk about some industry news, but I feel like most of the time it's all just bad. Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard, you know? Because I've been okay, so for context, I was watching the latest update from People Make Games, which is a great YouTube channel that talks about like the creative process behind games and like the people in it, right? Like that's the name of the channel. But they're doing a series now that is all talking about Rockstar specifically and how they just let go I don't know the exact number anymore, but like 30-ish people um for gross misconduct, and they happen to be a part of a union that was forming at that company as well. So you can kind of see where that is all going, and now they're going to trial and all that kind of stuff, and it's going to court. So I kind of been following that up a little bit as well. And yeah, it looks like the latest news is that the temporary court hearings have the judge basically in those temporary court hearings, or like in the intermediate court hearings, I'm not that good with like legal mumbo jumbo, has decided in favor of Rockstar instead of the union, which is a bit of a bummer, but we'll see how the eventual thing comes out. I mean, I say a bit of a bummer, like it freaking sucks for the people that got involved, because the whole idea was that they could get intermittent relief. I don't know the exact words, but basically, if they ruled in favor of the union, then the people would be reinstated to work for Rockstar again, until the final court date, right? So yeah, I've been kind of keeping up with that. But yeah, it just sucks. It seems like unions are forming, but it's always an uphill battle, you know? God. All right, but I don't want to keep talking about that. In that case, let's jump into some feedback, shall we? And we'll see what the community has put on my plate this week, because we got some cool stuff to be looking at. So let's switch on over and let's have a look. You know the drill by now. If you are a participant, feel free to raise your hand and it will go in order of the chat. So Swan is asking, you think they let the judge get an early copy of GTA 6? It is interesting because there was some stuff that got revealed through those court hearings that otherwise would have not been publicly known. I think there was a mention of 32-player like multiplayer, right? That was like specifically in those court hearings, like in those declassified documents for it. Not that that's a big surprise, right? We knew that GTA was going to be multiplayer, but just like the specific amount of people was interesting. Again, I think if that was of serious concern for Rockstar, they would have like classified it, right? But they didn't, so that was interesting. All right, first we got Designer, then Adobji, then Swan, then Powertail, then Zayant, and then Alice. Okay. We are off to the races. Let's see. So, Designer first. Oh, we are on your page already. Let's go. Cool. Okay, let me bring up the Discord as well so that we can read what we're doing here. Ooh, thank you for the feedback. Apparently there's an issue with the tips and tricks page. Ooh, okay. Let me make a note of that because that's good to know. Thank you for that. All right, cool. Another bug for me to look at. Right. Let's have a look here. The Blue City. I'm planning to post this hero asset next week, focusing on the central structure, the water fountain, and the rest of the scene will be showcased later as part of the full environment. Okay. Can I get your thoughts on what I can improve at this stage to push the quality of the structure or its overall composition? Yeah, so 2 things. Let's break this down. How to improve the structure itself. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's start with the easy thing first, the composition. I think even at this stage, because I know that you had buildings in the past, right? Or did they get removed? I'm curious. No, you did have buildings. I would honestly still use those buildings and push them in the background and just like hide them in like, they could even just be outlines. But what that does is they add a lot of like interest in the composition, and it can help you guide towards like the main thing, right? So that's what you see me doing here on the left, for example, where I add buildings. I kind of like create this curve coming down to the building, right? Which is pretty cool, and you can do the same thing on the other side as well. That can definitely be more interesting for the composition. I feel like the bench might be good if you pull it back just a little bit, because it's a bit too close for comfort. Like, I don't know, maybe move something like that, roughly, right? So that I can see just a little bit more. It doesn't have to be that much, but just a little bit. Now, when we get to the improvement of the overall structure, I think what I'm missing is some large-scale variation. And what I mean by that is that you have some really nice generic variation, right? As in, like, there's a good additional, like a good first texture pass already done. But what I'm missing is, yeah, some bigger variation in the surface. So, for example, there's a good example here actually in one of your references, where you have like this discoloration that's happening, but it's only happening on one pillar, right? Which is quite nice because it adds the sort of asymmetry of the whole thing, which is always more interesting to look at. And then it's just, yeah, that's like one example, right? So you could have like a big splotch here with some like additional color variation. And then I would look into like, how do you create like more interesting variation overall, right? Because the blue, for example, is pretty uniform again, right? And if we were to look in here, you can see, oh, maybe that's the reflection actually. This feels like it's newly painted, which is not really that interesting to me. Yeah, but even here, right? Like you can see that there's like color variation in the blue as well. So I would try to replicate some of those areas where, let's say this interior area had some damage or something like that, and that's like freshly painted. And then maybe you can use that same sort of paint in like some of these arches too. And the whole idea with that is that with that color variation, what we're doing is we're adding history. We're adding a timeline to this object, right? Because right now I have the feeling that it is worn, but it's almost like it's just been a month and there's just like some slight rain or something like that, but it doesn't have a long history to it yet. So that's what I would say. That's what I would honestly focus on the most, is just some large scale variation. And the way that you do that is potentially with some decals or something, right? That's probably the easiest thing. Project some decals on there, make it look quite nice. And then, yeah, just pick a couple of areas where you want to break things up. Because even in the subtle things, right? Like, let's say one of these guys is missing. This one's missing, and then you have like a decal of just like gunk running down because that tile is missing, right? in general, right? If we zoom out and we focus on like general good practices of what to do when it comes to making an asset or trying to sell a believable environment, it's always trying to. I usually refer to it as like the cause and effect, right? So if that tile is gone, which makes the whole prop more interesting, then that causes the rain to spill out into that little gully more often than other ways, right? So that's a good way that we can connect two things together and make the whole prop more interesting. It's the whole cause and effect thing, right? Like we talk about it like fairly regularly, where something happens that has an effect on the environment or the prop in that way. Oh, I see. That will be interesting. Yeah, and it's honestly so a large part of our job is we can take things from real life, right? Like we get inspired by it and we try our best to like accurately depict what that would look like in real life. But what we also have to do is we need to make it more interesting, right? Especially if this is the prop that is going to stand out in our environment, like making it more interesting than the rest of it is going to be important, right? Because we always try to exaggerate things in game art, right? Like make them even more interesting than they would be in real life. And then another idea would be potentially to have like a damage decal, right? That is just like a piece of broken plaster or something like that. That can then be used on like one of these edges, right? It doesn't need to change the silhouette necessarily, but it can just be like some surface damage that can be pretty useful. Those are some ideas to like make this prop more interesting than it currently is, right? It could definitely be interesting. Interesting. We're gonna be talking about hands quite a couple of times during this stream, but I feel like these sort of hands, like you would almost never see them that way, right? It's like you just like stamp them on it and you're done. It's like it never really works for me because this is almost like a person with like super muddy hands. Just like the first thing it does is like lay his hand on this fountain and that's it. But that's not what you would do as a person, right? Like you would wash your hands. It's just something that I think about whenever I'm coming up with the logic behind something, right? Like you can imagine, or you should try to imagine yourself in a position where, I don't know, maybe you're a local. Like how do you use this and where do you expect like the interaction points to be, right? And then try to tell that in like an interesting story. Because a lot of the interaction is honestly gonna be like right here, right? Because this is like the main interaction surface, because that's where we go to collect water, right? So that means that this is the area with most traffic, right? Let's call it that. Which then means that if this is the most trafficked area, that would potentially be the area where you would see like chipping on the edges or like water spilling over, you know? Because that's where people are interacting with it a lot. And you can kind of nail it down for like any prop, right? Like if you have like a CD player, you know, maybe this is too old for all of you, but okay, let's try to make it more relevant. You have your desktop PC, right? Let's say you're making one of those, and if you press the power button, that's the button that you're going to be pressing most frequently, right? So that means that most of the wear and tear is going to be around the power button or the reset button, but the rest of the buttons are going to be relatively clean in comparison, right? So that's a simple exercise. Cool. Let's see, was there a second question? From your perspective, what would be the aspect you want to see in a breakdown to understand how this asset was built, considering it's all trim sheet based with layer RGB masks? Right, so that's a good question, right? Like, how do we present something that is built up with multiple layers? Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind to me is either making a GIF or a very, very short video where you have your base texture, right? So let's honestly imagine that this is your presentation, right? So this prompt, you just have it the same way here. You can even do it like that, right? Like keep it the same way that is rendered here and render out an image for all the layers. So you basically go to your shader, you disable all of it. You just have your base texture. You enable your R layer, like your red channel. Take a screenshot, your green channel, screenshot, blue channel, screenshot, alpha channel if you have that screenshot. And then just go into a program that lets you just like compile all of it together, right? Like something like DaVinci Resolve, for example. And then just add like a little bit of text, add like a nice transition, make it like a 10-second video that loops, or maybe even a GIF. And that is like perfect, you know? You don't need much more than that. It just needs to showcase like what you've been doing in the most elegant form. If you want to do it as a still image, you could also do that. And then just have them like 4 in a row, or like, I don't know, maybe lay them out in like a quadrant, right? It's like in like a square. And then do the same thing, right? And then show the transition. Well, not show the transition, but show when each map gets activated as an additional layer. There are some ideas. Just to add some context there, what you don't want to do, and this is like the worst case scenario, right? Is let's say you take an image of all of those individually, and then you have them on your portfolio all individually, because now I have a lot of screen space that is dedicated for really no payoff, right? So that's why I'm a proponent of using GIFs, or maybe even compiling all the images into like one series. Cool. About hero assets, a single trim sheet with 2 RGB masks for the color and dirt and damage. I initially planned to include the surrounding props as well, but since some of them share the same materials with the full environment, I think focusing on step first would be the better approach. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff, designer. It's looking really nice. I like the lights. Very, very nicely focused, you know, like using the light in a very good way. Very dramatic. So yeah, that's cool. Looking forward to seeing this posted. What do we have next? We have Topg next. Let's have a look. I've made no notes yet, so I don't know what's coming. Where are you? So I've been working on the foliage this week. I'm focusing on doing the first pass in silhouette sculpts. The first question is, I feel like my ivies are evenly spread. Any guidance on how to make them feel more intentional? I feel like the answer is in the question, right? Like if it's all too even, then you need to just like make them more uneven, right? Power Tail, you were next. It's on the screen. Designers first. Topg is next. Come on. Come on. I've got the recording right here. Let's get back to the question. So yeah, I feel like my ivies are evenly spread. Any guidance on how to make them feel more intentional? I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like just making, like spreading them out a little bit more and maybe playing around with like the scale and the rotation and all that kind of stuff. Gotta be careful with scale, right? Because ivy generally has like a very consistent scale when it comes to the leaves. So be a little bit careful with how much you scale. But you could scale it at least a little bit and get like a bigger patch and then a smaller patch, right? But that, because for example, a way that you can use that to indicate like very natural growth in ivy is, let's say if you have like a big bundle, right? That is usually going to have bigger leaves because the bigger bundle indicates like more growth, right? Scale down to 0.8 for the most part. That's fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. Another thing, think about how ivy grows, right? So a simple one here. This cluster. As an example, if we isolate this cluster, where's the start? Where's the start of the cluster, right? That's also a thing to think about. It's like you need an attachment point to the floor so that you can conceivably say like, hey, look, this is where it started, right? And then usually what I'll do is I'll just take like, I don't know, a smaller cluster or maybe like a less dense cluster and like try to squish it in here, you know? Also, what is cool about ivy, if you have like your smaller groups, like try to curve them around objects. It's such a nice way to like break up some of those shapes, right? You're kind of doing it here, which I like. But having like an overhang and breaking up the silhouette could be really, really cool. So yeah, attach this to the floor. And then again, like you can see that a lot of environment art, or at least the way that I tend to approach environment art, is that it's rooted in logic, right? So logic dictates that ivy needs to have a starting point, which is usually going to start at a place where there's soil and moisture, right? So in this case, you potentially have moisture here, but there's no soil, right? Or it needs to have not necessarily soil, I guess, if you want to be a hardliner about it. But yeah, that means that if this cluster is disconnected now, there's two options, right? Either we connect it with the floor, or we connect it with the other cluster, because that takes care of itself. And then if we just add like more here, then basically this is a starting point for the entire cluster. Cool. And then we do the same sort of principle for like everything else, right? I think this is a great example. I think this one is good, right? And it kind of even curves around, which is pretty cool. I think making some like individual strings of ivy could be pretty interesting. The connecting part, I guess, is a much less dense ivy kit. I don't think it matters that much. It's up to you, really. If you want to use less dense or more dense pieces, right? Both can work. Cool. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's to go back to your question, right? Like, how do you feel? How do you make ivy more intentional? Intent to me has to do with like logic in this case, right? Like, how do we ground it in logic? That's basically what the question is to a certain degree. So yeah, comes down to a little bit of research, thinking about like logically how things grow, then replicating it in your scene as best as you can. Because now that brings up like interesting creative challenges, right? What are you going to do with the ivy on top here? Because that's not connected to the bottom one, so how are you going to add that there, right? And then it's like, okay, we can just add like a little tray here, like a little planter. And this is like the starting point of like all the ivy up here, you know? But now this already looks like way more logical because it's rooted in logic, right? And that's honestly what I love about environment art, is that some of the challenges, you don't have to solve them straight away, but you can creatively problem solve along the way as we're going along. And then just apply the same sort of thinking to the rest of the scene, to the rest of the ivy. Cool. For next week, I want to do a sculpting pass. So I've highlighted edges and meshes I want to sculpt, but I wanted some guidance of which parts of the environment could benefit from that. I'm trying to avoid straight lines. So I wanna zoom back out a little bit. And this is more in general, right? That when I say you need to avoid straight lines, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to sculpt in a lot of cases, right? What that can mean is that when you get to the final stages of your assets, you just add like a couple of additional cuts, and you just like, I don't know, move some of the vertices around, right? So that you get like a little bit more of a dynamic scene, or like a dynamic silhouette, I guess, in this case. But let's see. Yeah, those are gonna be cool. Is that wood? It is wood. Okay. Sculpts for that could be cool. Oh, that's the opening of the door. Okay, so if we look at like, I think you picked some good options, right? Let me give them a color. So is there anything else? What is that guy up there? Okay, so the green ones, in my opinion, are the ones where it's like, okay, because they're wood, that makes sense from like a material perspective, right? We wanna have some like nice sculpted wood for those support beams. I think that's gonna look really nice. Then when it comes to some of the other parts, I'll highlight some of them in purple. So the front one here in purple, that just makes sense because it is in front, right? So you are gonna see it. So spending a little bit of extra attention to it is always worth it. I would definitely say like if you're gonna draw the attention here, right? Which is good. But this is also still a prominent scene, like a prominent arch. So I would definitely spend some attention there as well. And again, I'm not saying that it has to be sculpts, right? But just breaking up that silhouette a little bit. And then some of the other ones feel optional to me. Because this could easily, the one up top here, that could easily be a bevel. Same thing here, same thing here. This one kind of depends on how much you're going to see it in the end. Because I can see why you circled it, right? Because it has like a nice organic shape. But honestly, again, if you just slap a bevel on that sucker, then I think you're going to be good. I don't think you need to go all in on everything, right? It's more about like managing the areas where people are going to look and then trying to yeah, push as many changes or as much detail in those areas as possible. So yeah, the other ones are more optional to me. Right, so the orange ones. Right, and then we have the purple ones. Those are like the focus points. With a support beam under the balcony, they appear to as stone in the concept. I don't think they do, man. I think that looks to me... I mean, it's still a concept, right? Like, it's this weird mix of... It could be concrete, because this looks more concrete. But this definitely looks like a wooden beam to me. It's up to you. I mean, if you want to sculpt... I mean... It's still okay to sculpt. Like, honestly, like, whatever you want to do, right? I mean, I just say this that you don't need my permission to sculpt. I think the case that I would make is that wood, making it like really nice and sculpted, that makes a lot of sense to me. I can already tell that when it's brick, I'm already in my head, I'm trying to reuse stuff that's already in the scene. That's what I'm thinking. But it is generally, it looks better when it's sculpted, right? Especially for like these weird kind of shapes. But yeah, I would honestly do wood because that gives you the option to sculpt, and then also you can just reuse them on the top as well. I'm fine with it being wood. Makes it easy to maybe share it on a trim or something. I wouldn't do that. Like, not for these. If you're gonna do sculpted wooden pieces, right? I would just go all in and just sculpt them all, and maybe do something where you sculpt 2 of them, and then at the end you just distort the low polish just a little bit so that you get like a little bit of variation, right? Because you don't need to sculpt like 10 of them. But like if you just sculpt 2, it gives you like a little bit of variation. Or let's say like 2 big ones and 2 small ones, let's say. And that will set you up to do like all the support beams from like the entire roof. Cool. Thank you, Top G. Best of luck. Right. Let's see. Who was next? So we got Swan next. And we got Power Tail. Swan. I have not made any annotations for you either. So let's dive in. Oh, congratulations on your new tag as well. Oh, that is something I just thought about it. I need to make sure that those notifications go out to the entire server. That would be sick. But yeah, congratulations on participating in 25 threads. That's awesome. Cool. Let's have a look. Looking to finish up this piece, and I have it posted by the 25th at the latest. Can I keep both tags? Start collecting? Unfortunately, you can't keep both tags, which is it's an annoying system. I wish there was a way to like stack them up. That would be sick. During now and then, could you point out where I should focus my attention on in the scene to help elevate it even further? I'm planning to add some final touches and some details to the current meshes, but is there something that is weak? I'm gonna talk from like a generic perspective, right? Like whenever you're thinking about like, hey, where is it worth spending my time? It is, for me, it is always gonna be on the story heavy elements. Usually they're the focal point. So if you want to add any sort of value to the scene, like visual value, that's where I would focus, right? For you, that comes down to specifically this area, and then also this area, right? And since you only have like 11 days left, like those are the 2 areas where I would focus on. Because yeah, like for example, you could definitely make some improvements about the background material, right? For sure. But in the large scheme of things, I think if you want to make an impact, the impact is better served on making this stand out more than it is to improve like your background material, for example, right? Hey, thanks for the sub, Chaba. I appreciate it. For CHXXBA. Yeah, I think I saw you talking to Juan Shou, who will be looking at like a little bit later to talk about like the peeling paint and all that kind of stuff. That stuff might be nice, right? But I would definitely focus on those other areas and like really trying to make sure that it reads as what you want it to read, right? Because for example, I think one of the things that I would still do is definitely, can I don't know. I think I might have screwed something up. It's no longer painting. Hmm. I will need to sort this out because I hate not being able to do this. Mm. Ah, oh well. I have to deal with it. I would still make sure that we are like focused a little bit more here, right? Because still in terms of like values, we are getting a lot of sun here, which is still distracting, right? And that is just balancing like the lighting in your scene. But yeah. I like the additions that you've done. I really like the way that this is looking already, right? So maybe it's time to tone down like some of the stuff that's happening here. Yeah. Okay. So spend your time on the focal point / story elements, right? For the rest of the scene. Is it cheating if I just push the chair back to not be in the sunlight? No. No. Why would that be cheating? That is literally like level art 101, right? Like if you recognize that something is distracting in the scene, and let's say for example in this case you don't want to move the sunlight, that just means that you need to compose the rest of your assets so that they don't become distracting, right? That can definitely work. But then you'll still have to compete in the bigger shots, right? Like it is still going to be the brightest spot here, for example. So it would be interesting to see how you can, I don't know, maybe try to balance it a little bit more. Or like at least try turning down the sun here and potentially making it like a bit more. Yeah. Trying to think. I was gonna say overcast, right? But if that is not what you intend, then that is okay. But again, like the same thing that you're saying with a chair, right? We can still diminish the influence on the scene by just like boarding up like some of these sections up here, right? And then you can still have like these open areas and then have like another section that's like a bit more boarded up. And this is literally the same thing that you're talking about when it comes to moving the chair, right? This is literally just like, oh, I need my light to be specifically on this location, so I'm just gonna slap a couple of planks. Josh is saying you could move some props around and play with different variations. It will give you ideas on different compositions and what makes sense as a whole. Yeah, I think playing around always is good. Sometimes this is very common, right? Like sometimes you need to do things and then improve upon them later, right? It's, yeah, honestly, like sometimes I also don't really have a clue what I'm going to be doing, right? But by just throwing in stuff, like your brain will kick in and it's just like, okay, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. Okay. And then continually like you'll improve the scene until it starts to click. Right. Yeah, but if that is what you want to do, like the final touches and details to the current scenes, I think that's a great thing to focus on. I would just focus it on the areas that matter the most, right? Like these two areas definitely make the most sense to me. And really, again, if you can think about like trying to enhance the story, right? Yeah, I think again, this looks like way better than it was before, right? We're actually getting like an injection of the story, which is really cool. I'll throw one additional thing into the mix. I'll throw a challenge. Let's call it the Nothing is Straight challenge. That means that this is not aligned with this, it's not aligned with this, it's not aligned with this. See what I mean? And then also, like, this piece of cardboard is not going to be a perfectly straight piece of cardboard. We're just gonna fold it up a little bit. We're just gonna crinkle it a little bit. This magazine kind of has like a little fold in it. Some of these planks, well, maybe one is shorter than the other, you know? That's what I mean. Nothing is straight challenge. Apply that to everything, and it's gonna look 1,000 times better. I can guarantee that. Zayad is coming up with a suggestion. I feel like handwriting on the wall may help, like counting days or something like that. Yeah. Depends on what Swan has the idea for when it comes to the story, but that could be cool. A Slater say no is cheating by trying to make your art look better. Yes, don't move anything. Like you. Oh my god, this would be a challenge. Make a one-shot environment, which means that if you place a prop down, it's there. Like, you know, you can put it down with the mouse, but as soon as you let go of the mouse, it's done. That's it. And now, that actually sounds like fun. I feel like I kind of want to do that. Oh, be the funnest way. I kind of want to do that in terms of like, okay, I'm only going to make a portfolio with one-shot environments like that, you know? And it's just like, okay, I'm just going to drag and drop, and then if it's there, I'll just have to deal with it. And then I cannot undo, and then I'll have to post it on our station. That would be sick. You know what must be done now? Yes, let's go Swan. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Oh, maybe you can give a limited number of hero unique dressings to choose from. Once you use them, that's it. Oh my god, that's even hard mode. Like you're adding modifiers. We can turn this into like a chat game, you know? Where like the chat gets to decide like what next action there is. Oh, that would actually be fun. Like Twitch plays environment art. Oh my god. That would be silly. Okay, let's have a look. Who was next again? Oh my god, I'm thinking about this idea now. Power Tail. Let's go. Ah, I made some notes for you. I have seen things like comment what thing this environment art needs next type of content. Interesting. Kind Could you send me a link to that? I would be curious to check it out. Was it like a live stream or was it like a pre-record? Well, it can't be pre-recorded. What am I saying? Well, unless it's like in chapters, I guess. Hello, Fairmora. Good to see you. I hope you are doing well, Fair. It was like a short form content series. Saw it a while back. See if I can find it. That would be cool. Yeah. I think it's a fun concept regardless. Yeah, it'd be fun to play around with some of those things. Yeah. Right. Powertail, let's have a look. So, 2 questions. How is the read so far on the shapes and the colors? Are things noisy in places or not noisy enough? Yeah, okay. Interesting. Oh, sorry. I had one note that I just threw in there once I got started. It's about the hide information, right? Like, I feel like it's very... If these are like the inspirations that you're getting, or the references that you're getting inspired from, I am missing some noticeable height variation, especially when it comes to the grout. I feel like the grout is kind of very timid, you know? I don't know if that is because the height scale or the way that you set up your texture, but yeah, some noticeable height variation would be quite nice. Now, on to the noise, or is it too noisy? I tend to break it down like this, right? Large shape, medium shape, and small shapes. I think the large shapes are just like the shapes of the bricks and all that kind of stuff, right? You've got some brick, you got some brick silhouette breakup. I think those are decent. What I'm really missing is the medium shapes, because the small shapes like the mortar and like not the mortar actually, the brick surfacing, right? Those small shapes, they're in a decent position. They can be improved, but they're in a decent position. But I'm completely missing like any sort of medium shapes, right? So that's where you were talking about like, oh, I'm kind of playing around with the idea of like having the mortars spill out from some of the bricks. That is something that will add like medium shapes to the whole scene, right? Or like to the whole material, which could be cool. I added some other ones, so broken bricks or rough bricks, because you got like these rough bricks here as well. So these guys, because they are noisy, right? Which is something we don't want to fill the whole wall with. But if you have enough of them that are like not noisy, we can create like a nice balance between all of them, right? So it's like a combination between the two that is gonna make magic. So yeah, so these are like the medium shapes. So broken bricks, rough bricks, like these mortar spills, you know, like it is stuff like this that looks really interesting, because first of all, it adds medium shapes, but it adds interaction between multiple layers, right? Because now the brick is encroaching, the mortar is encroaching on the brick, right? And that's what we want to see. Like, we want to have that spillover because it makes for a more interesting overall picture. Right. Medium shapes can also be like more chipping, and rough surface bricks. Yeah, for sure. It can be stuff like this, right? Like a broken brick, or like this kind of broken brick could be interesting as well. It is more like breaking up like these very clean surfaces with like, let's say this one is cracked and then it turns into like a noisy surface, right? Now the thing is, it can not only be like this one brick, of course, right? Because then that brick is going to stand out. So we kind of need to find a way to like do that to multiple bricks and kind of add some additional damage or something. I'll give like a quick indication, right? So let's say I'm trying to make it somewhat random. right? If we take like a random sample of all the bricks, and then we say like, hey, look, in these areas, I'm gonna inject like more damage or more noise, right? Then we could create something interesting. Now, obviously, you need to balance that in your own way, right? Because this might look like a bit too repetitive, but that's something that you'll have to balance. So yeah, but I think the colors are good though, because you were asking about that as well, and I think the colors are in a good shape. It's just now it becomes more about like layering additional layers of color on top of it to make it even more interesting, right? I'll give you all a little tip. This is one that I learned from Antoine Dejean, who then learned that from someone else. I think it was Josh Lynch, if I'm not mistaken. At the end, if you want to have some interesting color variation, you take a gradient map, and you know where you can sample like all the colors in your gradient map? Just sample all the icons in your toolbar so that you get like a random sample of colors, and set that to like a very low opacity to like, I don't know, 10% multiply or something like that. And have that on top of like your base color stack, and it adds like a nice bit of just like random color on top of like all your shapes, basically. It's a cool little trick. Balance it to your heart's content, right? Maybe 10% is too much, maybe it's too little, but it can create like a really interesting variation. Like discoloration, yeah. It's honestly just like, if you look at like a lot of surfaces in real life, like a lot of them, especially like a brick wall, is going to have like a lot of just random stuff going on with it, right? So it adds a little bit of color complexion, which is cool. Number 2, how can I achieve a dirtier look to the bricks? I want to add maybe some water leaking. I feel like we already talked about that, right? Like the way that you break up like the medium shapes and like breaking up some of the individual bricks. I think the mortar spills are a good idea. And yeah, I would definitely think about like making certain areas of the mortar also like noisier, right? Because then you get like this really nice contrast between like a clean brick and like a noisy like bit of mortar just sticking out. There's also one additional tip that I wanted to give. And this is because I felt that overall, in terms of like surface treatment, most of your most of your details were like pretty flat still, right? And I want to give like an overview, like an indication on how to do any sort of details, right? Like when I talk about details, I'm talking about like, let's say you use like a grunge map to then like distort your texture in a certain way. If we're talking about big shapes, you will do that with a height map, right? But the smaller those things become, the noisier a height map becomes, right? So at a certain point, we start to add less of those smaller details in a height map, but we add more of them in a normal map. And that creates this effect where you can have like a brick that has like some uneven surfacing, but has like a lot of like little pot marks and all that kind of stuff in it. And it still reads well because the height map is not going crazy, right? So use your height map for big to medium surfaces, and use your normal map for medium to smaller surfaces to add those details in it. Because an example like this here is, you know, like a brick like this, for example, that's mostly normal map, right? And then you can take like a grunge and like intensify the normal map or play around with the normal map strength to get that specific look, right? That's not something that you want to put in the height. AO gets crazy too from the height map. Yeah, exactly. That's also another tip that I'll give. Use your AO. Ah, this is a tricky one because technically it's not PBR correct. Nah, I won't say it. Because you might get some hate from your local tech artist. But you can use your AO map in sort of like interesting ways, right? Like if you use your AO and then like blend that with like a distorted map from something else, you can get some like really interesting effects if you want that. Right. Thank you, PowerTail. A lot of pros behind AO with color. The yeah, it is. I mean, but the major thing is that it just breaks PBR values, right? Like if you use it to blend and then distort and all that kind of stuff, right? If you're using an AO map to just get like the crevice or like height information, right? Then yeah, you can use it. I'm not saying to not use it, right? But I am definitely saying that someone will call you out for it if you do, because this is generally like not good practice in like professional settings. But if you're doing personal work, yeah, fuck it, why not? You know. I think in most of the materials that I do, yeah, I tend to blend in like at least a little bit of AO, right? And like, I think I blend that with like another gradient map or something like that to get like more interesting like base color stuff. Yeah, it can definitely be useful. Right. Zayat is next. But Zayat, you're not in Discord, right? I think you made an account, but you're not in the Discord yet. Oh, okay. Makes sense. Him trying not to be cancelled. No, it's not that I'm worried about that. Like, I don't really care about that necessarily. It's more about like it's always a concern of if I give someone that recommendation and they're going into a professional setting and then they get like a bunch of shit for it. That is my concern, right? So yeah, it's not necessarily that I care. I mean, I do it all the time. But it's the context of knowing when to use it, right? That's the main thing. Fortress is here. Okay, let's have a look. Fortress. Is this music from The Witcher 3, like the OST? No, it is actually music that a friend of mine made. Her link is in the description, in the chat, if you want to check it out. Marika does some really cool music. Okay, let's have a look. Opening questions I had. Are you following the Unreal Engine tutorial from Decagon on ArtStation? Marika? You shouldn't say that to a Spanish speaker? Oh my god, I have no idea what that means. Oh, Zayan, I'm not saying that as a bad thing, right? But I just recognize like the scene setup and all that kind of stuff. Or it's very reminiscent to it, at least. That's cool. I love the inspiration bits. I have not added them here. I mean, that's honestly a good tutorial, that one. That's probably one of my recommendations. Let's see. So what should I focus on improving overall to get a oh my god, to get a better main look? I mean, what should you focus on? The main element of the scene still needs textures, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. That's like obviously the main thing. And then you'll probably hear me say this to like the next day, but storytelling, right? Like, what story are you trying to tell, and how can you turn that into assets that can contribute to your scene, right? I love what you're doing with the vases and like the urns, right? Maybe there's something more, right? Like, did this person that came here, did they bring anything? What is what is inside of this tunnel? Like, is there some indication there what they're doing there? Because yeah, I mean, let's see, because I'm looking at the inspiration as well, and it honestly feels like it's kind of just like a shrine or something like that. Let me copy it in here. It's like an ancient place and the person who came here used the boat. I mean, yeah, but is that like a really interesting story? Right? Like, oh, it's an old place and we came by boat. Right? I mean, come on, give me some spice, you know? Like, because even like, okay, so it doesn't necessarily need to be that like the story needs to hit you like over the head, right? But even the place itself and the way that it's lit and composed and all that kind of stuff can indicate what kind of place it is, right? So yeah, maybe because you're playing around with like this animal here, right? Like maybe that animal can be recurring on the trim sheet of some of the urns, right? And then we are trying to connect like two things together, because then what we're doing then is we're making connections between all the elements of a scene, and it's going to make it feel more consistent, right? And that consistency is already going to help us in forming a story of like, oh, okay, there's something going on with this creature, right? So it's probably a shrine devoted to this creature, whatever this creature may be. But it's given us something to think about rather than, oh, it's an old place and we use the boat. You see what I mean, right? Like we try to add some spice to the whole thing. We try to at least leave breadcrumbs for people to then be like, okay, interesting. Because yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, right? There's always options in everything that we do. Obviously, take what I say with a grain of salt, right? Because my work has always been focused on, it's very much aligned to what the industry does, right? Like what we do in games is we set dress an area to tell a story about that area that you're in, right? But you can also leave it like more mysterious, right? Like there's games out there that do it the same way. But then we're not talking about set dressing, but then we're talking about texturing, right? And then it becomes a question of what do you want to showcase? Because if you want to show storytelling and set dressing, then we need to come up with an idea of what additional assets we can make, or how to make the, let's say, the staircases or something like that more interesting, right? However, if you want to keep it clean like this, then it all comes down to textures. If that makes sense. Right? Because if we're not going to add anything, then the textures become like really prominent. And then we need to focus a lot of our attention on how good the textures are rather than the individual assets. Do you think having a portfolio piece that will look like you were following a tutorial will backfire on you? No. Like, so here's the thing. I think tutorials are normal, and like even people inside of the industry use tutorials from time to time, right? I don't think that's like too big of a surprise. The answer to that question depends on how you use a tutorial, right? If let's say your entire portfolio is made out of, oh, I followed this tutorial and this is what I made based on that tutorial, but it's the exact same result, then I don't see what you contribute to the whole process, right? But if you're like, hey, look, I did this tutorial here, which is like the military radio. Cool. How did I use the knowledge from that military radio to then make an anti-aircraft gun, you know? And then it becomes interesting, right? Because you took a tutorial, cool, you have it on your portfolio, cool. That by itself, it doesn't really add too much. But if you then take the next step and then make something from yourself with it, that's where the real value comes from, right? Well, so the idea here is that you follow a tutorial. You can even post it if you wanted to. I mean, I don't think it adds anything. But after a certain point, you want to get rid of all the tutorials because you want to show off the stuff that you've done, right? I like the value contrast with the water in the regional concept art. Let me get it back. Let's see. And Lily is saying the water looks so good. I picked another concept for the water because I felt like it was a little bit muddy. This is also an interesting point, right? So the water is muddy in line with the rest of the scene, right? Because this scene feels old, muddy, and grubby, right? So if you are doing the same approach to the texturing of your staircase, but the water is shiny and pristine, there's a mismatch between the two, right? It might seem like a minor thing, but if you have pristine water, then maybe it would be nice if you then opt for cleaner architecture as well, right? That's a good thing to bring up, actually. Cool. So, yeah, let me make some notes as well because I completely forgot to take any. So the main focus of the scene is obviously this guy right now, but also what you're going to be doing here, right? Like, what is happening here? Are you going to leave it open? Are you going to do set dressing? Are you going to change the staircase? Like, that's going to be the main question right now. So, oh my god, you can barely read this. Let me. A little bit too strong, maybe? Main focus, assets, or textures. And then the second question here is I'm feeling a little bit lost in the set dressing stage because I can't really imagine how everything will look together at the main entrance. Walls, floor, materials, and small elements like gravel and small patches of grass. Any tips on how to approach this? So, I mean, that's a good question, right? So if you feel lost in the set dressing stage, what usually helps you out as an artist is action. Whenever you feel stuck, momentum is going to get you forward, right? Whether it is good or bad momentum doesn't really matter in that time, right? Because if you're stuck, you just want to get out. So what I would do is if you're thinking about like additional pieces of set dressing, block them out really quickly, throw them in the scene, test them out. It doesn't work. I don't know. Okay, we're going to try something else, you know? But if it does work, you can keep it and then like build in the next section, right? For example, if you're thinking about like little gravel patches or gravel like grass, it doesn't need to be final texture and all that kind of stuff in the beginning. It can literally be just like a green color with just like a bunch of like quickly modeled like grass plains, right? It doesn't need to be the final thing yet. But you're just trying to look for the quickest way to visualize what you have in your head to see if it makes sense. And then once you know that it's going to work because you put it in the scene, then you can continue building on it. So for example, again with the grass, so yeah, if you're stuck with anything, move. And I literally mean that, right? Like move, it doesn't need to be in like a general direction. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's just like momentum will carry you away. And then so what you want to do is the quickest, dirtiest version of it first. Which, by the way, that's usually why we do blockouts, right? This whole process that we don't get stuck and lose momentum and all that kind of stuff, that's why we use blockouts, because we're setting up the fundamental of the scene and then we're building on top of it, right? And depending on how much you need visual context, right? So for example, if you have a hard time imagining, a scene, then a more detailed blockout is going to be required from you compared to someone else who can like vividly imagine what they're seeing, right? Mike, no, that's a great question. This chat, like, honestly, there's no noob questions, right? Sometimes I just throw out like a bunch of like random words, well, middle, like industry standard words that are probably not known by you. So, what is set dressing? Set dressing is basically what I do on a day-to-day basis. It's taking pre-existing assets, pre-existing assets, decals, structures, all that kind of stuff, and I compose them into a scene, right? Usually, maybe this gets too specific, but like set dressing usually means that like the majority of the shapes I've already figured out, and that I just need to go in and make and set dress the environment to make it look like people or creatures or anything like that lived in that area. We'll get to your question in just a minute. Tau Koyorama, thank you for asking the question. Let me finish this one up and then we can talk about it a little bit. So yes, like we were saying, Zayad, if you feel stuck in this stage, right, try to get like the quickest possible thing in that is going to give you some clarity on that, right? Because even if it is a texture, right, like making a quick texture, or you could even download a texture or make one really quickly using Megascans or Quixel Mixer or whatever you want to use, right? Again, the quickest, dirtiest solution where you can visualize what's going to happen in the scene, and then once you know like, oh, this is going to work, cool, then you can go back and make all the things yourself, right? But it's good to like proof test those ideas before you do so. Yeah, so I hope that helps, and best of luck with that as well. This is a really cool scene. Book is cool, like it. Yeah. Right. Oh, if we're talking about set dressing for more, that's a good question. So, honestly, the best way to do it is Unreal Engine every month gives you like free asset packages, right? Download those and play around with them. I think that's a good way of doing it. Yeah, Josh is on the money. So I use free marketplaces like Adobe, Library, Fab, or somewhere else, and have a collection of placeholders that will help me gradebox and rapidly iterate without committing to modeling. Yeah. Exactly. Tao Koyorama, let's have a look. So I have a concept I'm recreating on where the impact space doesn't allow for some of the objects in 3D. Would you recommend scaling the room, changing the tight vibe, or foregoing the objects? What do you mean? So you're recreating a concept. Oh, sorry, I just read that wrong. Compact space doesn't allow you for some of the objects in 3D. Would you recommend scaling the room or foregoing the objects? The room is intentionally claustrophobic, a hoarder vibe in the concept. I mainly don't want someone else like a recruiter thinking, oh, he forgot to put it there. Yeah, interesting. So I would say, so here's the thing, like if it's an important asset for storytelling purposes, right? Then I would not remove it, and then I would scale or like change the room if needed. However, if it's just like random clutter, like you can just, yeah, if it's just generic, you can just leave without it, right? That's honestly where I would focus my attention on. It's like, how important is it to the scene? If it is, keep it. If it's not, change it. Do you think I need to do a level of sculpting for the gate and stairs? Were you planning on? Were you planning on doing that? Let's have a look at the next person in the meantime. Thanks, no worries. Best of luck. Mm-mm-mm. Right, fair. Let's have a look. I've had a lot of things in my scene. The vast majority are still in whip, though. The colors are still off in a lot of areas, but I'll worry about that later. That's all good. Let's see. To answer your questions, you did want to, but now I don't know if I have to. Well, it depends on what you want to achieve for your portfolio, right? Like, what is the goal of the project? If your goal is to show off, hey, I know how to work with trim sheets and all that kind of stuff, you don't have to sculpt it. Right? Because, like, sometimes environment art is complex, right? So you don't want to cram all the workflows into like one scene, especially if you're still building up like your skill sets, right? So for example, when I think back when I was still, I mean, there's still stuff that I like, a lot of skills that I lack in, don't get me wrong, but when I was still building up my confidence in a lot of the fundamental skills, I usually built environments around specific skills. So if I wanted to learn speed tree, for example, I would only focus on the trees and I would just make a forest, right? If I then wanted to focus on another thing, I would kind of like isolate it into like another thing. Because usually why we drop things is because we get so overcomplicated with things that we try to cram it all into one environment where it doesn't need to. Because okay, so you want to build a good knowledge of the entire pipeline and actually know how to sculpt in ZBrush? Well, then it becomes your question, right? Like, do you think sculpting in your case is going to give you the best end result? Oh, thank you, Fairmora. You are right. Alice is next. Oh my god, I'm glad you're paying attention, you know? Maybe you should become the stream producer, you know? Because oh my god, I keep like misreading and and missing things apparently. Okay, so next one is Alice. Before we dive into that, I mean, I know that I'm intentionally hesitant, right, Ziad, to answer your question because the question is more for you than it is for me. If that makes sense. So, if you think that like sculpting those elements in ZBrush is going to make for the best end result within your skill set, then I think that's what you should do. Right? That's what this basically comes down to. Adding a bunch of decals to a level in order to make it feel more alive, will that count as set dressing? No, but it's a component of set dressing. Honestly, decals is the detail pass of set dressing. So because yeah, you're not gonna get really far with only decals, right? You want to have like your assets and I don't know, your props and all that kind of stuff that tell the story, and then the decals are just like the cherry on top, you know? Yeah, right. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, no worries. Sorry, sometimes it sounds weird, but sometimes I dance around the question in a way to to help you become more you, If that makes sense. You know, there's just some things where you just have to like trust your gut and like go for it yourself, right? I know that I tend to do this a lot, but yeah. There are some things like, for example, if you're doing like high to low poly and you're trying to not bake an asset, then it's like, yeah, you need to bake an asset, right? But if you have like an item in your scene and you're like, hey, should I sculpt this or not? It's, I mean, you can go down the list of like, okay, if it's like a focal point element, right, and you want to get like the highest quality detail, usually going for like a baked sort of workflow and using ZBrush as a tool within that is a good shout, right? But in this case, it's a gate, so you'll have to find like different ways around it, right? Because you can sculpt the whole thing, but it's so big that you can only use you will either have to be smart with the way that you use that texture information by repeating like elements and stuff, right? Like you could sculpt like one petal or two petals and then reuse them and symmetry them and all that kind of stuff, right? Or you would have to go and use a rock workflow, let's say, which means that you're gonna use your sculpted map and then do like additional layers, like RGB masking layers on top of it, right? If you want to do it that way. As an example. Right, Alice, let's have a look. Let's have a look. I'm looking for feedback just basically on the scene overall, and if there's any major forms that really don't read well or stick out. I'm trying to play into the scene being contrasted with the shadow and light coming from the window. Yeah. On one note, how can I increase the realism for the wall and other materials? I feel like it looks too stylized in some areas. Yeah, I think it's a great looking scene so far. I think you've done a good job. The immediate thing that stands out to me is the AO information on these tiles specifically. I don't know if it's just like AO or like the way that it's textured, but like this black is just way too strong for the texture that is in it. That's like the first thing that I saw. Also, I don't know how this looks on the stream. Like on my screen, like this is like really dark and some of the elements are like bleeding together. So it becomes like pretty hard to read, right? But obviously this comes from this depends on your screen itself, right? So that's the first thing that I would say is like reduce the AO on the materials to make them look less stylized, right? Because that black information is not really helping you out here. Also, you got like the hand paint here, like the fingerprints, the bloody fingerprint stuff. It's honestly too cliche. I would say you have two options here. You can either remove it entirely, because I feel like it feels like illogical, right? What is someone's bloody handprint doing in this abandoned place, right? Because if we're going with that story, again, cause and effect, right? Like if you have someone's bloody handprint, where do I go next, right? Because you're giving me a clue, but there's no follow-up, right? Like I don't know how to, like what that means. Like it's just like, oh, someone had a bloody nose and like wiped his hand on the wall, right? It could be that for all we know. There's just no additional context for me to follow up with that story, right? When it comes to the material itself, one thing that I thought about was like adding more variation in the grout. I think you've done a fantastic job already, but just like adding more like random rotation to it could be really interesting. But some of these areas look really good. Like for example, this corner here, where you have like the individual tiles and like some of them are loose and all that kind of stuff. Looks really, really nice. And you've done a good job of breaking up like all the majority of the straight angles as well, which is really nice to see. Yeah, overall, fantastic job. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that one is also interesting. When it comes to the story, like, I don't. Is that a supply cache or something like that, right? Like, it kind of feels. It feels like we're trying to set up a story, but I'm not really sure. What? Okay, this is going to be controversial, for me to say. As a lover of like urban exploration stuff, there can be something beautiful in the story just being the abandoned nature of the building itself, right? Rather than putting a story inside of it. Not saying like it's your choice if you want to have a story in it, right? Um, yeah. But sometimes it's just nice to look at like the historic beauty of a space just by itself. But yeah, I think it's a good looking scene. I would do like a couple of those small adjustments to the material. I think you're good then. Yeah. I don't really got too much more to add here, to be honest. Alice is saying blood decals were mainly just trying to add a bit of interest, but I see what you mean. Yeah, but it's like I get what you're trying to do, right? But it's like you're trying to add something without context, right? Which is usually where it falls apart, right? Because I think at that point it's actually better to not have it rather than to have it for the sake of having it, right? So that's what I mean. Like, if you're gonna add those like little elements, try to build a story around it, right? So for example, what that could be is that we see this, which is like, okay, they opened the locker, so the drop was successful, right? Because it's probably locked with like a code or something like that. The person came in here, thought that they were alone, opened the locker, and then got ambushed by people that were waiting in like another room or like, I don't know, hid somewhere, right? And then the last thing that we see is like the guy just like collapsed in the corner with like a face shield on. Just like, that's what we see, but he's kind of hidden in the corner somehow. You can barely make him out, but he's there, And then, then we can have like the bloody handprints, and we can kind of have like a smear kind of going down, like a subtle smear or something like that, And like a bullet hole or two, to give like extra context to like these cracks. But now it's like, oh, okay. Story is there. I can see what's happening, right? Because you can kind of deduct, like, even if you see the body first, you can kind of go back to like, oh, okay, bullet decals got shot, like hand smear. Okay, they got hit here, and they were out for something that was in that little locker that is now open, right? Something like that, right? Does it need to be a body? Not necessarily. It can be something else completely, right? It can also be that maybe they got hurt. You see, like, I don't know, they got like bumped against a wall, but then still managed to escape, But then you see, like, I don't know, maybe in this screenshot, maybe the guy survived, right? Like the hero of the story survived, but the opposite happens, and we just have like, I don't know, like someone's legs here, like just out of frame. But yeah, Josh is saying, sort of like how age and broken nature of a hero is a story as itself without it needing its own compelling narrative. Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that can stand on its own, right? Like that's also why people gravitate towards like abandoned, or at least I do. I don't know, I'll speak for myself, I guess, but like urban exploration videos, right? Or I've done like urban exploring myself because I was interested in the story of this thing that was important back in the day, but is now just like abandoned and completely forgotten by people, right? And obviously there's like a beautiful nature of like nature taking over back from like human society and like healing itself and all that kind of stuff, right? Like it has like a lot of really interesting um like underlying story elements going on. Do you think it's necessary to always have a render from the same angle and perspective as a concept in situations where it doesn't always translate and line up correctly in 3D? Nope. Nope. Whenever I did whenever I've done challenges, right? So I did a couple of like ArtStation challenges. So let me have a look. We go to my profile. I'll show you really quick what I mean by that. So if we switch over to main camera, this guy over here, can I actually, yeah. So this is the original concept, right? From Victoria Anda. Beautiful concept. I loved it from the get-go. And I loved how rough it was, right? Like, sure, the elements are there and I can read the intent and all of that. But it was still mine to interpret. And then I turned that into something like this, right? Obviously, this is like freaking 10 years ago, so I could have done a better job now looking at it. But you can see the way that I translated the concept was like, hey, I keep the main elements, but I make it my own, right? And that's honestly what I love doing in environment art too. Sure, sometimes what you'll get is you'll have art direction that is like very specific and concepts that are very specific that you'll have to like get as close to as possible. But most of the time, I found that you have a voice in a matter, right? That you can go and talk to the concept artists and say like, hey, look, I've had this idea. What do you think about this? And then they might be like, oh my God, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, a quick sketch here, blah, blah, blah. You know, and that's how games get made. I think that's the interesting thing about it. Of course, for like personal work, it's a little bit different, but yeah. Long answer short, no. Cool. Bear is next. Let's have a look. So I'm not sure. So the first question is, I'm not sure how to add these unique details marked in blue on the concept, considering that I'm currently using a trim sheet and tiling textures for those objects. I feel like I can't capture those specific details. Would you recommend switching to a unique prop workflow like sculpting and baking for the green wooden parts, or is there a way to achieve this while keeping the trim sheet? Trim sheets are honestly always about just like playing around and keeping smart, right? For some of these elements, let me disable my stuff. I'm not sure what you mean with this. Is it just like the stuff on top of it? Because honestly, the majority of what I see here is decals, right? So whenever you see like these splotches or these bits of damage or anything like that, what I would do is you would do a very subtle but generic pass on your trim sheet, right? So just a couple of edges, like nothing too fancy. And then what you would do on top of it is you would have separate decals that you can then add on top of it to create those effects, right? So you would just have like some generic edge damage on your trim sheet, and then whenever you want to add unique details, do that through a decal. I think that's going to be way more efficient and way easier. And then you have like these ones. These are a little bit different. Honestly, I don't know what the hell's happening here, so you'll have to interpret that for yourself. What I would do is just reuse the elements that you already have from your trim sheet, but then maybe in a different configuration, right? What you could maybe do is there might be a way, because if you're going to texture this with a trim sheet, yeah, there might be a way where you can cut a certain piece, stitch it together with another piece or something like that, where you can get like a new shape that you didn't think of, right? But honestly, to keep it simple, I would honestly just take like one of these panels here. Take this panel here, for example, and then just use that here, right? And then maybe you can have like a little piece that goes on top of it still. That's fine. And then maybe you have like these things here. It's just more about like kit bashing and like cobbling stuff together and seeing how it looks, right? Because you can definitely get away with those. When it comes to this guy, I don't know, just fill it up with something random that you have, right? Because honestly, what is this? No. Sometimes, like, this is literally what we just talked about, right? Like, sometimes what happens is that a concept is so rough that you'll have to interpret things yourself. You'll just have to be like, okay, I'm just going to do this with it. But I would always lean towards like, hey, look, this is supposed to be like a window, right? Because it's green, so it kind of uses the same sort of language. So use the same sort of concepts there. It's confusing. Yeah, but that's also where the fun is, you know? Because now you can inject your own kind of thought process into it, right? Come on, this is where the fun begins. Cool. So let's see. And then the second question is the concept art piece. In the concept art piece, there are a couple of hanging signs, and this was basically the title of like the episode, right? There are a couple of signs that have some sort of sketches on them. Should I replace those sketches with actual 3D geometry, like paper pinned to wood, or instead leave them as hand-drawn sketches on a wood surface? I noticed that some of those sketches are casting shadow in the concept, which implies that they are separated as separate 3D objects. It is honestly, think about like where the location is on the asset, right? So in this case, it's right here. And from the context that we can see, is there's just like some random stuff. Maybe that's like a little space where, I don't know, it's like the sale signs, right? Like the for sale signs, or like maybe, oh, there's like a special sale going on. That's where they store like all that stuff. So it kind of feels just like random bits of things. And what I would do is, because you have got the zoomed in one here, right? This could either be a post office box, because it kind of has like that post office box like design, right? Which then maybe this is just like a generic looking latch. But I would honestly, anything that is internal, I would honestly imagine it like this. Right? And then you get to fill in the blanks. Right? Because for that one, I would just assume that it's like a mailbox, right? And then just make like a nice door that you can open with like a latch or something, right? This one is potentially like a little bit easier. This looks like a more like a shopping sign to me, that has just like 2 dots connecting to like this guy here, and it has some carvings on it, right? So this is like a for sale sign. To me, right? But like, here's the beauty about this. If you think, hey, sale sounds boring to me, screw you with your stupid ideas, Tim. I'm gonna make something else. You're totally allowed to, right? If you think, hey, I can build something better in the context of the scene, do it, right? This is where the fun begins. Because see, even here, like I made the mistake, now that I had a proper look at it, I thought, honestly, that these were like small papers. But it looks like more of a mailbox to me. But if I was working on the scene, I would be building like a bunch of papers now. And this would be like a post-it board, you know? In the end, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you need to just interpret it the best that you can. And if, I don't know, if you miss something, you know, it's okay. It's a small thing in the end, right? Because One big thing that I think is worth highlighting, right? If you are replicating a concept art, if you're using a concept art as inspiration or as reference, it is not about replicating every single detail. It's about replicating the core idea behind the concept art. In this case, that little mailbox and that little carved out little sign, that's not the core of the concept, right? The core of the concept is that we have this beautiful man-made house with like the stone tiles on the roof, and everything looks like nice and colorful with like swaying wind, with trees in the background, with like a nice volumetric clouds, or like a nice pink volumetric cloud at the background, right? And it's there to convey a mood. But if we change like that mailbox to like a post-it board, that's not going to affect the mood at all, right? So whether we change that to whatever we want is of little consequence to the rest of the scene. Hey, Rustam, welcome. Also, good to see you in the community. Lovely to have you. That makes so much sense. Yeah, and I think that's what it's all about, right? Like, it's again the good question of how Koyorama is it necessary to like stick to the concept like 100%, right? No, like to me, a concept art is always like an indication of intent, right? Like, this is my vision of the scene, and you can take that vision and like add your own spin to it, right? Obviously, when we're talking about like an actual production, that restriction becomes less loose, right? But when it comes to your personal work, you can be like, hey, look, this is going to be my spin on this concept, right? The concept can be there to indicate the architectural style of the building, where the placement and the composition is going to be. But if you want to make a pink house instead of a yellow one, sure, go for it. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. Let's see, was there something else? I don't think so. But yeah, thank you for posting your work, Fairmora. I love the way that it's coming around. This is like such a fun scene to build on. There is honestly, there's honestly something itching in me to make something like this, where I can just go crazy with like geometry, right? Because I've always been like very stringent, or like, I don't know, limited when it comes to the use of geometry. So sometimes I just want to go like, I don't know, pick a nice concept and model it. Maybe that's what we'll do. Friday stream. Who knows? Takoyarama is saying, I find myself wasting hours trying to nail the exact overlap that might not even be possible outside of 2D. Yeah, that's the thing, right? And like, if we really understand the goal of like a 2D concept, right? It is to give you, okay, especially a concept art, right? It kind of speaks for itself that it's a concept, right? It's like an idea. Like, it's a visual development of an idea that you have. It's not something like a model sheet, right? I don't know if you've ever seen like model sheets where like people would be like, hey, look, I've made this vehicle, this looks really cool. Oh, but here's like all the blueprints, right? Like, this is how it's this is the side view, the top view, the front view, all that kind of stuff, where you have like the actual I don't know, like almost 3D representation, right? That makes it way easier, because now the 2D artist also had to think about like a 3D interpretation of it. But the reality of that is that it's never going to be like that. Or in the beginning of my career, I have gotten a couple of those model sheets, right? Where I've gotten a breakdown of like front view, side view, and I don't know, whatever view I needed. But that was about it. The rest of it was just like, oh, interpret like, so that you can't really see, you need to interpret it, you know? I even use FSpy. Yeah, I know a lot of people who do. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Because also like it's not only about like the camera placement and the angle, right? It's also about like, okay, what kind of FOV and what kind of like depth of field and like all those like camera settings that come into play too, right? Because you might have like something that's presented in a more orthographic nature and you're trying to like capture with like a perspective view. It's going to be really hard to like replicate that, right? At least in the beginning. Yeah, that's honestly a good lesson to learn though. Like trying to be perfect, and you end up wasting a lot of time. Yeah, it is a lesson that we all have to learn, I think. But yeah, you got this. You got this. I believe in y'all. Yeah, and a lot of them are photo bash too. Might not even be achievable. Yeah, exactly. We're not gonna go down this rabbit hole, right? But if you then extend that to like AI and what it generates, right? We can make the same sort of like, what's the best way of saying it? The same sort of, God, it's on my tongue, but I can't think about it. It's the same sort of end result, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Generalization, yeah, it was something else that I was thinking about. It doesn't matter. See, I don't want to be perfect, you know? I'm already perfect? Let's go, Slade. Struggling to texture a door? Let's go. Ah, there's so much fun in it, though. I know, yeah. God. I remember when I was a wee artist. I mean, in certain aspects, I still am. But you know when people say, and this is gonna come out the same way as I'm gonna say it, like, you know when people say like you gotta enjoy the process, and that never really made sense. It never really made sense to me. And then at a certain point, it did. And I'm gonna say the exact same to you all now, is that the process is where it's at. You know, it's not about the end result. It's where it's during those struggles, during those improvements, during those decisions. Like that's where it's at. That's where the creative juices are. You might not be seeing that now, but yeah, it is so fun. All right, let's continue on. We got a chill Bill with Will. Will, hope you're doing well, buddy. Hope school is treating you good. We can kick an ass with this project, though. Let's see. I'm working on some final touches, such as the story, lighting, etc. Could you give me some help and opinions on the story in the scene, any visual issues you notice, and opinions on texture readability? Cool. Yep. So I basically went ham and was just like, hey, look, here's weird stuff that I see. I started pointing out. I'll go over a couple of things. These guys are not attached to anything, so they just like end on the pillar. This in the foreground looks to me like it's a blockout prop. It's just like a blue kind of cube that's happening here. There's this really clean wire on the floor as well, which kind of needs like the same material that you got on everything else. Because honestly, that works like really well. You know, where you got like all the snow on top of everything, and the way that it like hangs in the folds and all that kind of stuff looks really nice. I do like that a lot. There's these two guys. I'm not sure what they're doing there. I honestly thought that it was like, you know, where you have like your modular kit that is not like fitting properly. I thought that that was it, but I don't think it is. I think it's just like a strip. Maybe it's supposed to be like a gutter or something like that, or maybe like a strip from, I don't know, from the roof. Yeah, it's happening there too. Yeah, there as well. Interesting. I see. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So these are straps that are meant to connect things, but they were barely visible that I just assumed that it was like something weird. Okay, so in this case, what I would do is I would remove the I would remove the snow from them potentially. Because it does look weird at the moment. I I also still have the suspicion that it might even look weird afterwards though. So I'm almost inclined to like, you know what you got this hook and then it kind of goes up. I'm almost inclined to just have it like go up to this ledge and then just disappear, you know? It's like, it's attached to something, but you can't really see it. But that's something for you to try out, I think, because I have the sneaky suspicion, even if you reveal some of like the strap underneath, that it might still look weird. One thing that you could do is to emphasize like that the strap is cutting out snow. That might be weird for other reasons, right? Anyway, this little jumble of branches was also something that stood out to me, especially because you got like the snow kind of highlighting like all this crashing together, right? I think you'll have to just go in by hand and do some good old hand modeling there to kind of clean that up. And then this tire in the front was missing some snow as well. There's some like placeholder mesh or like blockout e-mesh over here too. But yeah, just like really nitpicking across the whole thing, right? Now, when it comes to the texture readability, I think is ace. I don't really have like any comments on that. Like I was saying, the way that this looks freaking awesome. I love it. I love that you got like the little highlight here as well, showing like the little fabric. I think you did a fantastic job on the way that the scene looks and the way that the materials read. So then the last thing is really about the story, right? And I think this is one of those cases where it's not really on the nose, right? Like, because we have like a quarantine set up, so I'm assuming that people are going to go in here and we see like a delivery happening as well, right? So we see like a truck here delivering something. We don't know what. But yeah, it's kind of vague and high level, right? Not necessarily a bad thing, right? But like I'm thinking about ways that we can potentially add like some elements. Let's say one of the crates. One of the crates is over here as well. And maybe, I don't know, there's more supplies like stacked up behind it and on top of it. To kind of indicate that they're transporting stuff inside, right? So that you have like the 1, 2, 3 going in. Potentially. Like an indication that stuff is being transported, right? But yeah. Don't really have too much to add otherwise when it comes to the story specifically. I think it is nice. Like, it's one of those cases where I am wondering what's happening, right? As in, so I know that like a quarantine is being set up, but I don't know if they turn this into like, is it a base that's being used, right? Like the Division or something like that? Or is this like a medical thing where they're still going in and trying to rescue the people, or I don't know. And again, not saying that that's a bad thing, right? But it's interesting the way that it like is. I'm asking those questions. Yeah. It's a stunning piece, Will. I think you did a fantastic job. I knew that you were going to knock this out of the park. You've been working really hard for such a long time. But I think this is well deserved, man. saying this is a nice piece. I like snowy environments. Yeah. Oh, I love snow so much. So good. Reminds me of the Division 1. Yeah. I've gotten an itch to get back into the Division, honestly. Those environments were so good. Man, I remember still to this day, probably the Division 1 cinematic trailer that came out is probably still one of the best trailers that I've ever seen from a game. It was honestly so good. Like, that trailer by itself, like, won me over to buy the game. Oh, so good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the Division 3. They are working on it, so I am curious. Yeah, when Ubisoft used to cook, yeah. They're in a weird place. And I have still so many of my friends working there, right? And I think there's a difference between like the outside perspective and like the internal perspective, right? I feel like Ubisoft was a really, really good company to work at. I don't know if that's changed since then, right? Yeah. Don't say that. Shittiest masterpiece. I think it's interesting where it's a weird one, right? Because the move that they're doing now, where for context, what is currently going on is that they're splitting into multiple creative houses, right? So basically, they're splitting up like Ubisoft into multiple subsidiaries that will then own certain IPs, right? So you got the first one, which is called like Vantage Studios or something like that. They own Tom Clancy Rainbow Six Siege. Tom Clancy Rainbow Six, I think, not specifically Siege. Assassin's Creed and Far Cry, right? So that's going to be the first creative house, and then we'll see what's going to happen with the rest, right? I don't know. I think they want to make 3, but I'm not sure. Maybe that's a rumor still. I have no idea. Just saying, hopefully they don't get bought out by private equity or some other mess. Well, so talking about that, Vantage Studios has been majorly invested by Tencent, right? So I think they invested like 1.2 billion in them or something like that. And I think they will take that private. So it will only be shared between Ubisoft and, well, yeah, Ubisoft and Tencent in that case. But I don't know. Like, I have honestly no real clue what to think about it, right? Because there's definitely benefits of splitting up into like multiple creative houses, right? Where if you split up such a juggernaut of like, I don't know how many people work there. I'm not up to date with the numbers, but let's say 20,000 people, right? At a certain point, if you have like, I don't know, what was the last like Assassin's Creed Shadows where they had like 10 or 15 studios working on it? There's a lot of built-in friction just in communicating between different time zones, different cultural backgrounds, different structures. Like, there's a lot of friction that happens there. So, and even for a normal team, like honestly, if you have worked in games, and for the people that haven't, that will in the future, what you're gonna be saying after a certain while is that, man, I have no idea how games get created. It's crazy. And I think maybe a part of that issue is gonna get alleviated, right? Where if they split down in like smaller studios, maybe that helps. Yeah, I'm genuinely curious. But I can also see that it's like a scary time if you're still working there as well, because the uncertainty that I feel now about the future for Ubisoft, right? Like if that's gonna work, whatever they want to do, that's what a lot of people are feeling internally now, right? So we'll have to see. Environment art wise, Ubisoft is still one of the best, but there are certain other aspects where they downgraded. Yeah, I mean, there are certain other things where, and this is weird, right? Like they in certain aspects they know what they need to do, but because it is such a big, lumbering giant, it just takes so long before they can make those structural changes, right? Even if you just look at like this subsidiary stuff, right? Like splitting that up, like that took like ages. Can't imagine what someone working there is feeling. Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Because to a certain degree, I think a lot of people in the industry, no matter where you are, no matter which position, you feel the same, right? Because they've had the voluntary like redundancy scheme for a while, right? Which basically means that I don't know if you got compensated for leaving. I'm not too sure actually, but there are other studios that basically did like, hey, you can voluntarily leave and we'll even pay you 2 months, 3 months of your salary to help you out, right? So voluntary redundancy thing. Ubisoft was doing that for a while. And then obviously with some of the recent changes that they did, I don't know, that program must have come to an end for certain studios because they decided to still lay off people too. But yeah. Yeah, I do wish them all the best though. But yeah, it's an interesting transition to see. I don't know what to think about it. We're seeing the Attack on Titan and Assassin's Creed collab. God, yeah. I mean, there's some weird stuff going on. But, I mean, that's the same thing. That's the same thing with like the current, or like not even the current trend, right? Like the more recent trend of, hey, we have this really successful like live service game. We are gonna inject that with like, I don't know, whatever you want, right? Like Destiny did like Star Wars, but not Star Wars, right? Like that was their thing. Call of Duty Modern, not Modern Warfare, but like Warzone kind of had their own kind of thing, right? I've never been a fan of where you sacrifice your world building just to sell more skins. I mean, fucking no surprise, right? Like I'm an environment artist. Of course, world building to me is going to be more important than selling more skins. But I feel like there's better ways of doing it where you can keep like the world building intact while not selling a bunch of stuff, or like trying to sell a bunch of stuff. What is a quadruple? What was it? A quadruple A experience? Yeah. Yeah, that's another one of those debacles, right? Well, also like there's a recording somewhere of Yves Guillemot like mispronouncing the name of the games, right? Like on the release of like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and he called it like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Freaking Skull and Bones. Oh my god. But that's the thing, right? Like I think in general that's an interesting rift that's kind of happening now, where there's a rift happening between the business and the creative, right? For a lot of companies. Call of Duty lost more than half of its fan base because of microtransactions, like Ninja Turtle. Ninja Turtles. Oh my god. Yeah. Okay. I guess those forever games won't be forever then, right? That. Right. Let's continue moving on. I'm curious to see where it's gonna go. And I genuinely wish them the best of luck, right? I genuinely enjoyed my time working there. I have still a lot of my friends and colleagues and people that I genuinely love to work with still working there. And yeah, I wish them all the best. Just add more giant men boss fights. Oh, yeah. No thanks. Nah, I'll skip that one. It's not my market anyway, so I'm not going to judge it too hardly. Let's see. Let's go back to some critique. So, One Show is making a couple of changes following last week's feedback. Question number 1 is, I'm not sure of the idea of adding 3D flakes to the peeling wall. Do you think it would benefit the scene? Should I make more of them? Yeah. I think honestly these look great. They're amazing. You know? They add a little bit of depth to the wall, which is really cool. The only thing, like you're saying, is keep them to areas that are, you don't want to add them too much, right? But like pick a couple of areas where you can add a couple. So for example, here, this wall maybe, right? Add like one here because you're gonna get like some nice play with the lights. And then maybe add like one more here somewhere, and then one more here. These areas are fine because they're mostly in the shadow. Yeah, just a couple more. But those are great. I think you've done a good job on them. And then your second question is like, is it worth sculpting these elements? So yeah, it's a good question, right? Like, should I sculpt these? It's basically the question of, should I add more details? Where I'm gonna give you options, right? If you're familiar with sculpting and that's the quickest way for you to do so, sure, sculpt them to get the quality level up. However, I think if you really want to get, or if you want to keep it simple, you can just add more geometry to it, right? Because the main thing that makes it feel like so basic is just because like this is just like a little simple model, right? But like if you were to like break this up a little bit more, right? If you break this up a little bit more and you do that on a couple of the bigger pieces, right? So for example, this guy as well, break that up. The planks are fine. Maybe try to break up like this angle here a bit. But that's more than enough, right? But it just depends on what you think is going to get the best results, right? Because sure, this adds more geometry, right? But I think it can be justified in this case. But if you really are like, oh, I want to make them look like really, really nice, and I want to get them to the next level, yeah, sculpting probably makes a lot of sense. Right, but if you pick some of the bigger pieces and then you just like break them up, that can be more than enough for what you need. Good stuff with the cracks up here as well. You're doing some amazing stuff. I know it's not easy to keep working on the scene and keep iterating and keep pushing, but you're doing amazing. So amazing stuff, Joe. Also, since we're talking about like adding more geometry to the theme, right? Pick a couple of these planks. And separate them out as real geo. So what I mean by that is, for example, taking this guy and then curving him like inwards or something like that, right? So that you have like a hole in the floor. Doesn't need to be visible, but something like that, right? Because yeah, we're getting to that point where you're adding like a lot of really nice geometry to the scene. So that those little things really start to matter a lot now. Looks very good. Yeah, it does look amazing. Yeah, really does. It really does. Can we go back? Because yeah, you gotta wee woo. You gotta appreciate where people come from as well, right? This was 5th of this was in February, so almost a year of just really working on it, really iterating on it. So yeah, amazing stuff, Wancho. Like nearly there, but you got like a scene that is like really stunning. So keep it up. Think about like the small little details like you're doing already, and then see how you can increase or like break up some of the small bits, right? Like you have these like beautiful little pebbles here. Scatter a couple around here as well. Just like very subtle stuff, right? Like, and there's also like you're breaking this up a little bit, like a little bit of dust too. Yeah, because it's basically looking at like, okay, where's my eye drawn to and how can I improve those areas, right? Because, for example, this edge, I would honestly scoot that like decal over so that it hits this like reflection point here. It's really subtle stuff like that, right? Maybe some subsurface scattering on here. Slight subsurface scattering. Just throwing out like some suggestions, right, to help you push stuff. Maybe we could have get like a mega scan tree, put it in the background, right, so that you have like the silhouette of a tree or something like that. Or maybe like another building. Because sometimes those like really easy things, right, like just getting like a mega scan tree or something like that can add a lot to the scene. Thank you for being here, Slate. Thank you for the support as always. And yeah, I'm not sure if you're gonna be here on Friday. I don't know what time zone you're in, but yeah, I'm gonna be here for most of the day actually. So it's gonna be a nice change up. But have a nice day. Right. Okay. One shot. Thank you so much for sharing. Nearly there. You're doing some amazing work. We'll stream to watch while I work on Friday. Yeah, let's go. See you on Friday then. Right, 2 last people here. We're gonna talk about Ben's work first. We had to skip Ben because there was a lot of context missing. So let's have a look. Let's have a look, Ben. So let's see. The space is a secret underground dungeon underneath the mansion of a socialite who is secretly practicing dark arts. Okay. So secret underground dungeon underneath the mansion of a socialite. I mean, we're not really going to be able to like visualize those things necessarily, right? Unless we add like, I don't know, some sort of indication of like a hidden entrance, right? I'm imagining that there's like a little pathway up with like a lever or something like that, right? Could potentially be interesting. As this is someone who takes some pride in her space, I want it to look controlled and thoughtfully laid out. Hence the desk in the right middle and the well-positioned bookcases. She was like the room, but like she always used the room in somewhat of a hurry with some objects scattered. So, I mean, it's better to dedicate yourself to one thing, right? Because then we can make sure that we get across that she is like very controlling and very specific with the way that she does stuff, right? Because if we're gonna do one area that's specific and one area that's scattered, we're going to muddy the waters and it's going to read as confusing, right? So that's something to take into account. Bookshelves will be mostly lined up with books instead of with dark magical objects, along with plants and apothecary items, think eyeballs and jars. And there are several scattered over the desk with a mini potion seeming. Okay, a reference board will grow once I finish the main base environment, including additional prompts. Okay. Cool. General thoughts. That sounds like a lot of work. If you want to do like all the dark arts and like a lot of the assets and all that kind of stuff, I think you're in a good position to build up on that now, right? You've got like the main room is laid out. The main room layout is done. I would honestly, at this point, get all assets in. The reason for that being is when you're going to be making like a bunch of assets, like, and I'm talking pure block out, right? Like, don't worry about details. It can be like simple representations of the stuff that you want to build, but build it all, because that is going to help you define the scope and the scale of the scene, and it's going to make it read like way better, right? Because right now it's really hard to imagine what the end goal of the room is because there's nothing in it yet. So what we want to do is build a block out that has everything that we have, and then use that to see like, okay, how much stuff do I need to build for the scene? Oh, sorry, Josh, I missed your question from the last time. Would it make sense for them to make a sub-kit of spare parts? Multiple sculpted boards, broken up pieces, and then they can rotate and place them as needed to mix and match? I mean, in that case, if we're talking about the previous person, they can already do that, right? Because they have like the rubble already. So what you can do is you can just like strip those out into like individual assets, right? So once, I mean, maybe that's what you mean, right? But once you've got like, let's say a rubble pile and it's compiled out of like different pieces, you can easily just break them apart again. That's the cool thing about making it all in Geo, right? It gives you more flexibility rather than the more traditional method where you have like a debris pile, but most of it is texture, and you have like a couple of things sticking out of it, right? Because then you're limited to the things that are sticking out, not the debris pile itself. Sorry for skipping that question. That's a good question. So back to this one. Yeah, so that's the first thing that I would focus on, right? Get all the assets in, first of all. Define the scope of the scene. Because from your description, currently, I don't know how big or how ambitious you have the scene in your head, right? So making sure that it's visual, both for you and me, is gonna help us both. Yeah, because at that point, what we can also do is talk about reuse, right? So that would be a good conversation to have. Let's look at some of your references. It's so hard to avoid now, but be careful with like AI references, right? Try to go for like real life references, like look at like real architecture and how that's built. There's probably like these three are probably like AI, right? Like potentially this one even too. Not too sure about this one, but the reason why I say that is because it gives you like a better understanding of how the architecture actually is, right? Even though, like you said, that this is like lighting a mood, what I would do is I want to see like references for like real life architecture. What you have here is is great, right? It's a good start. You got your core components, you've got like the desk, you've got the bookshelves, you've got like game art references to kind of see what you can do in terms of like tech, right? And you got like lighting and mood, which is pretty interesting. One thing to also keep in mind is yeah, you got references for architecture. Try to, when you're modeling all your assets, model some light assets as well. Because you have point lights in here, which is good. It's a good indication. But how are you gonna like physically add them into the scene, right? Like, is it gonna be a chandelier? Is it gonna be like a torch or whatever? Because that might have an effect on like what color the light is gonna be and how intense it can be, right? So that can give you like a better indication as well. But yeah, that would be like the next big step, getting all the assets in so that you can get like a proper understanding of the entire scene before you then spend a lot of time on like texturing and all that kind of stuff. Cool. Cool. Right, I hope that was helpful, Ben. See, wall and floor textures won't be staying as they don't match the art style anymore. Okay. That might also be a good thing to define, right? Like, what is the art style? Like, if you're gonna try to latch on to something very specific, because we're trying to reduce the amount of time that you're going to be spending like trying to figure stuff out, right? That's the goal of the block out as well, right? Like, once you have all the assets in a very rudimentary shape, that means that we can now focus on just executing rather than, oh, I still need this, I still need that, right? Like, we're trying to reduce like the cognitive workload on us. So what did I say? Define art style, right? Like, is it a certain game? Is it, I don't know, like, some visuals and some ref would be really good for this. Justine is saying, I don't know if this will add too much complexity, but to sell the story of a secret room, a revolving bookcase, or a fireplace left partly open with a rotation scratch on the door could add interest. That's a cool idea, actually. That is a cool idea. It might constitute for like a little bit of like rejigging the scene, right? Because then it would be cool that the fireplace at the back is kind of like the rotating mechanism, right? And then maybe... yeah, we'll have to do some composition changes, but that's a cool idea. I like that a lot. That could definitely be like a little light bulb. That's like the ugliest light bulb that I've made. So the secret entrance could be revolving door or fireplace. I do like the fireplace. That's a cool idea. Permore is saying, Tim, what are you planning to do on the stream this Friday? Portfolio reviews? Yes, so the idea is that I'm going to start with portfolio reviews, potentially do 3. Yeah, we're going to start with 3, I think. I don't think I'm going to do any more. And then what I want to do is, I don't know yet, honestly. So what I'm thinking about doing, as I said in the beginning, was open my medieval project, see what the hell is going in it, because it's like all kinds of chaos, and then maybe see how we can evolve on it, right? I think that might be like a good thing, kind of get to grips with like streaming work and all that kind of stuff, and making sure that like my PC doesn't die in the process. I think that's where we'll start. Yes, the medieval project might be back. Dun, dun, dun. It's been a while since I looked at it, so I don't know. I kind of have a rough idea. The last thing that I was playing around with, I was playing around with doing level instances of my biomes. So I was basically making like yeah, groups of like little bushes and trees and all that kind of stuff, and then chucking them into PCG to then generate the forest, right? Yeah, we'll see. See, we're gonna wing it. Because yeah, I do know. I do know that I also need to. I want to go a bit more in the Nanite direction because I have some cool ideas that I wanna play around with. So maybe we can look into what I need to do to translate my trim sheet into a displaced trim sheet. Maybe using the height map or something like that. We'll see. Right. Thank you, Ben. I hope that was helpful. Looking forward to seeing the next iteration of the scene. And then last but not least, McFal. Have a look. I'll make any notes for you. I'm fairly inexperienced in sculpting, so want some advice to see if I'm going in the right direction. Question 1 is, should I be satisfied with just sculpting the shapes, or do I need to also get the smaller detailing in the sculpt? No, I think that's a good question. So for any sort of like detailed stuff, I would rely on just like Substance Painter, right? I would kind of focus on the big shapes, the big cracks, the big splits, and all that kind of stuff, and then do the surface texturing. I would just do that in Substance Painter. I think that's like way easier. So the way that you're going about it is pretty good. What I would definitely do is focus more on this chipping and actually giving it like more depth, right? Because what I always do like about wood is that you can see the layers, and then depending on how you texture those layers, you can kind of reveal the history behind it, right? So what I'll mean is, let's say your first layer chips off here, and then your second layer chips off here, right? And then at this point, we're like 3 layers down. But that also means that we're like, because this has a thickness, this has a thickness. So now we're like carved deep in the wood, right? So we actually carve into the wood with those layers. Then we can do the same thing here, right? So we link that stuff up here. And then this is going to be like our first layer. It is basically just like trying to replicate like some of the nice edges here, right? Really getting like some 3D in there, right? It's almost when it comes to sculpting, it's like, I mean, this might sound obvious, but you have to think in like 3 axes, right? Like 3 axes where you don't really have like yeah, you basically think about like XYZ, right? So also whenever you're going like into like the wood, for example, like varying the thickness of that like crack, right, helps a lot as well with the readability. It's like doing stuff like this, right, where you have like a cut, but then that cut goes down. That really helps with like the readability of it being wood, right? Because now we're varying the edges up a lot. So instead of, let me give a better example, right? I know that this section is not finished, but it serves a good purpose, right? This is fairly equal in terms of like the thickness of it, right? Just by quickly, just let's say we're sampling the color. By quickly just like playing around with the thickness of it, we get like a more interesting look already, right? I tried to do something similar with the texture, just with the height layers for the last iteration. What is the last iteration? Is that this one? Oh, are these different iterations that I'm looking at, or was that you're just talking about? Was the one on Christmas? Oh, yeah. Got it. I got you now. Yeah. Yeah, but now basically you need to replicate some of the same things, but in 3D, right? Like really getting that like depth and that chipping and all that kind of stuff. Because that's gonna make it really cool, right? Because basically when it comes to the sculpt, the main thing, I mean, this might not be like the most interesting door. Like what you want to capture. Oh. Doo-doo-doo. So this is basically like the region that you want to capture, right? With your sculpt. And the rest of it can be done with just Substance Painter. So yeah. But it's a great start, man. I know that like sculpting is tricky. It takes time to really get into the flow, and you know, in the beginning, I think it's if you're really chasing that realism, right? Like it's better to like chip away at like a small area, really try to get a feel of it, and then it's done with a mouse. Oh my god. Okay, I mean that's a pain. But hey, you know, that is a pain. What I was gonna say is focus on a small area. Try to get like a general feel of like the layering and the way it's sculpt, and like try to figure out like a bunch of brushes, right? God, it's been too long for me to say, but I know that there were like a bunch of tricks with a trim dynamic with like a square alpha or something like that. That can be like really good for those elements. But yeah, play around with some of the brush settings, and then you know, take a little bit of time to get acquainted to like one area, and then once you got a feel for it, then get them free orb brushes. They're not really that good for like anything realistic, I would say. Even though they are fantastic brushes, right? You should definitely get them. But for like chasing realism, maybe not the best. Get it with a pinch of salt. It's been like ages since I sculpted myself, but got a square alpha set up in Blender. That's good. It's good. Yeah, so let's note this down. So first comment would be layering of the wood, right? Like really focus on that. It's gonna make it look really nice. What was the second question? Compared to the references, does it read similarly in terms of large wear and silhouette, or should I give it another pass? I think you can definitely push the silhouette a bit more, and then the large wear and tear we kind of talked about it already, right? Oh, I guess this is like accidentally like answered number 2 in front of number 1. So yeah, just to reiterate, sculpt is for large shapes, and then anything that is like surface level. Not designer, painter. 2 for 1 special, let's go. Yeah, but that's about it. So that's what I would do. But yeah, great start. And I know that it took us a bit to get to this point, right? To make the decision to spend a lot of your time on actually sculpting this thing. But I think this is going to be the best outcome of if you want to go for like the highest quality, right? So good choice. Keep it up, buddy. Then looking forward to see what you're gonna do with it. Right. And that's it for this week. No, it's not. It is not. Because I'll be back on Friday. Oh my god, I'm so used to saying that that's it for this week, but it is not now. So I'm looking forward to Friday. Again, I don't really know what I'm going to be doing yet. I have an idea that we're going to get onboarded into Unreal because it's been a while. Let's get used to it. And the first session will be more just hanging out, having a bit of like an exploration kind of vibe going on. And then what we'll probably be diving into is I'm going to open the scene again. We're going to some rough ideas is that I want to check out the way that I set up like the PCG. Kind of dive into that a little bit again, kind of get acquainted, and then see just the state of the scene itself, you know, because it's been a while, so we're gonna get acquainted with like my medieval scene again. Yeah. I'll see you all on Friday. Have a good evening, and yeah, see you then. Bye. Open the floodgate of portfolios. Yeah, exactly, Swan. It's gonna be good though. I'm looking forward to it. Like honestly, I like the way that we're setting it up right now. And I've got some good comments from other people as well, where they really think that it could be a benefit if we're gonna quote unquote grade like portfolios now. McFall, is it every week? That's the idea currently. We'll see. We will see. Depends on demand. It will either, like, I'm not sure actually. Like, we're gonna see how long the first session lasts, and then either it will be weekly or bi-weekly that we'll be doing it. Because maybe what I might do is also do like a portfolio review a week, right? So that we're not like bogged down by like me talking about portfolios for like 2 hours. Maybe. We'll see. All right. Have a nice evening, y'all. Bye-bye.